Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a higher dimension. I'm Gloria from Gloria Danvers Hypnosis, and I'm your host for this podcast. Today, today I want to talk about something that sounds very spiritually evolved on the surface, and that's understanding. Being understanding, being compassionate, being the kind of person who says, well, I know why they are the way they are. And that sounds really evolved. And that sounds very evolved, doesn't it? It sounds kind and spiritual. It sounds high vibrational, and sometimes it is. Being the bigger person, doing the work yourself. And talk about difficult. People come in, people have come into my life, people have come into my office absolutely shattered and exhausted. And the first thing they do when they're talking about why they're such a mess is that their partner does this and the parent did that and there was a betrayal from the sibling, but it's not their fault. They had a hard upbringing. They didn't get what they needed. They were hurt when they were vulnerable. And my clients feel like they are being the bigger person because they understand this and they have excused it. And they also wonder why they feel so bad inside. And they wonder why they feel so bad inside. Generally, understanding someone is really a beautiful thing. It allows us to soften and to keep from being bitter. Understanding helps us remember that people are not just their worst moment, and they're not just their bad behavior. They're not the pain they caused. People have histories. They have wounds from dysfunctional childhoods, trauma, and many things that they've never healed from. And when we understand that, it can help us step back and see the larger picture. It can help us step back and see the larger picture. But today I want to ask a different question. Is there such a thing as you becoming too understanding? And what happens when understanding someone else becomes the way that you abandon yourself? What happens when compassion turns into an excuse? What happens when you keep saying, I understand why they did that, while your own spirit is whispering, but it still hurt me? What happens when you keep saying, I understand why they did that, and all the time your own spirit is whispering, but it still hurt me? Because that's where this inc- because that's where this in- because that is where this becomes important. And when it comes spi- and that is where it becomes spiritual. Because that's where it becomes important. And that's when it becomes spiritual. Not spiritual in the pretty way, but spiritual in the real way. The way that makes you look at yourself and say, am I actually being loving here? Because I feel awful. I feel like I'm disappearing. I think a lot of us have been taught that being understanding is high vibrational. We're taught to forgive and to hold compassion. And if we are evolved enough, we should be able to rise above the damage. We're told to look at the soul and not the behavior. We are told they're wounded. And yes, they are. In so many ways, they are wounded. But here's the part we don't say, because we don't even realize it. In fact, it's not even in our brains to think this way. And that is that their wound does not give them permission to keep wounding you. And your ability to understand their pain does not mean you have to keep standing in the path of it. That's the piece that people miss. Because understanding can become a compassionate trap. It can sound like high vibrational wisdom when it's actually keeping you stuck. You know what I mean, because you're saying things like, he had a terrible childhood, or she doesn't know how to love, or they were abandoned. They're afraid of intimacy. They don't mean to be cruel. They just don't know how to communicate because they were never taught any better. And that puts them under a lot of stress. And all of that may be true, but here's another truth standing right beside it, and it is, but there can be another truth standing right beside it, and that is, they hurt me. They drained me. They lied to me and manipulated me. They made me feel small. They took from me and gave very little back. And they kept me in confusion and made me question myself. They made me look foolish and dumb. Both things can be true. You can understand why someone is the way they are and still decide that the way they are is not healthy for you. And still decide that the way they are is not healthy for you. And that's not being cruel. That's being clear. And clarity is high vibrational energy. Now let's talk about vibration for a minute. Let's talk about vibration for a minute, because this is where people get very confused. We often think that high vibration means softness, peace, forgiveness, compassion, kindness, love, and light. And of course, those things can be high vibrational, but not when they are being used to cover up the truth. Because truth is very high vibrational. And boundaries are high vibrational too. A clean, honest no can be extremely high vibrational. And sometimes the most spiritual thing that you can say is, I understand you, but I'm done. Not with hatred, not with drama or revenge, just with truth. I understand you, but I am done. There's a vibration to that. And it's clean and steady. It's not cruel or spiteful, not trying to punish anyone. It is aligned. And alignment is very different from niceness. That's something that we need to understand. Niceness and goodness are not the same thing. Being nice can Being nice can become a performance. It can become a survival response. It can become people-pleasing dressed up as spirituality. But goodness, that requires truth. That requires honesty. Being good requires that you do not participate in your own diminishment. And that's where too much understanding can become dangerous, because too much understanding can lower your vibration. And I know that sounds strange because understanding sounds like a higher quality. But when understanding pulls you away from your own truth, it's no longer high vibrational. It is distortion. It becomes an energetic leak. It becomes an energetic leak. It becomes energetic leakage. It's you bending your energy around someone else's wound. And so you keep making room for them. And you keep explaining them to other people. You keep softening the edges of what they did. Keep translating their bad behavior into pain. And yes, it is pain. I would never diminish that. But that kind of pain can still harm people, no matter how much you understand them. Because a wounded person can still lie. They can still betray. They can still betray you, manipulate you, a wounded person can still use your compassion as a doorway back into your life. A wounded person can still use your com- a wounded person can still use your com- a wounded person can still use your compassion as a doorway back into your life. And if you're not careful, your understanding becomes the bridge that they keep walking over, right into your peace, your nervous system, your heart, into your energy field. And that's why you can't think clearly and your body feels heavy. Perhaps you wonder why you f- Perhaps you wonder why you feel anxious after talking to them and why you keep replaying conversations and you feel guilty every time you try to choose yourself. That's not high vibration. That's entanglement. And there's a difference between compassion and entanglement. Compassion says, I see your pain. Entanglement says, I will organize my life around your pain. Compassion says, I understand how you got here. Entanglement says, I will let you hurt me because I understand how you got here. Compassion says, I love your soul. Entanglement says, I'll sacrifice my peace to prove my love. And that's not love. That is an energetic leak. And this is the part that I want you all to hear. Sometimes what we call love is actually a leak in the energy field. What we call compassion is actually an old survival response. And what we call forgiveness really can be fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being the bad guy, fear of being alone, of admitting that someone we love is not safe for us, of being afraid to say that this relationship is costing me too much. And the spiritual community doesn't always help with this because there's a lot of pressure to be above it all, to send love, to be forgiving, to see the lesson and to see the soul, to understand the wound. And I really believe in all of that when it's real. The true enlightenment is much more complex than that. Simply put, I don't believe in using spirituality. I don't believe in using spirituality to silence your own pain. That's spiritual bypassing. And spiritual bypassing can look very evolved from the outside. It can sound wise and peaceful. It can sound enlightened, but underneath it, the body knows. The body always knows. It knows when you are betraying yourself. Your body knows when your mouth says it's fine, but your stomach says, no, it isn't. Your body knows when you're smiling while it knows when you're smiling while your spirit is shrinking. It knows when you are calling something compassion that is really fear of confrontation. Your body knows all these things, and it's going to tell you whether you want to hear it or not. This is where vibration becomes very practical. This is where vibration becomes very practical. Practical, because our vibration is not just what you say you believe. It isn't your peaceful path or your meditation or your prayers. It isn't your ability to speak kindly about the people who hurt you. Your real vibration is your relationship with the truth. And ask yourself, can you tell yourself the truth? Do you listen to your own body? Can you say to yourself, I understand them, and I also understand me, and I also understand me? Because that's the missing piece. We're so busy understanding everyone else their childhood, their fears, their triggers, their traumas, their emotional limitations, attachment styles, the inability to love, the inability to commit, or to tell the truth, or to really show up for someone else. And somewhere in all that understanding, we forget to understand ourselves. We forget to say, "Why did I stay?" That's an important question. Here's another one. Why did I keep explaining it away? Why did I keep trying to why did I keep trying to prove that I was loving enough? Did I think my compassion meant I had to tolerate pain? And why did I make their wound more important than my peace? And these are not questions to make you feel bad. These are questions to wake yourself up with. Because many compassionate people have a hidden belief. And the hidden belief is this: if I understand them enough, I can heal this. If I care about them enough, I can stop being hurt by it. If I understand them enough, I can make sense of why they treated me that way. But you and I both know that understanding rarely brings peace. Sometimes understanding just gives you more. Sometimes understanding just gives you more reasons to stay in something. Sometimes understanding just gives you more reasons to stay in something that is damaging you. And again, we have to be really honest about that. Because some people are very, very good at being understood. They've got the sad story. They'll show you the wound and they'll let you see the wounded child inside that suffered it. And your heart opens. Of course it does. Because you are a loving, compassionate human. And you care. You see beyond the surface. But seeing beyond the surface does not mean ignoring the surface. And I'll say that again. Seeing beyond the surface does not mean ignoring the surface. And yes, their soul is beautiful. Every soul is beautiful. But how do they behave? Their wound is real. But do they take responsibility? And maybe they did have a painful past. But are they using that past as but are they using that past as but are they using that past as an excuse to keep harming people? I'm sure they love you the only way they know how. But is the only way they know how enough for you? Enough for you to feel safe and respected and valued? Really, is that enough for you? That's not a shallow question. This is a question. That's a question that will reach right into your core. Because you matter. You matter. At some point, you have to stop treating your own peace like it's negotiable. Your body, your heart, your time, your energy, those aren't things to keep sacrificing just because you understand why someone else is hurting. And you are not here to be endlessly understanding while your own light gets dimmer and dimmer. Now, does that mean you become hard? No, that's not what I'm saying. It's not about becoming cold and losing compassion or judging everyone who's imperfect. We're all imperfect. We have wounds and we have patterns. We all have moments when we don't show up as our highest selves. This is not about demanding. This is not about demanding perfection. This is about recognizing repetition. There's room in every relationship for human imperfection. People get scared, they get defensive, they say things badly, and they make mistakes. But love can't survive on excuses alone. Love cannot survive on next time I'll be better. Because at some point, you have to look at whether the person is growing or whether you are really being asked to tolerate the same wound in a different outfit in the guise of, you know how I am. That phrase right there, you know how I am, can be very dangerous. Because what it often really means is, I expect you to adapt to my dysfunction. And many understanding people will do exactly that. They will adapt. They will shrink. They'll lower their expectations, change their tone, watch their words. They avoid certain subjects. They become careful, and with that, they become smaller and smaller. They say, well, I know how they are, like it's a Band-Aid that's going to cover what's going on. But the deeper question is, do you know how you are? Who you are becoming around them? Are you maintaining your peace? Are you open? Are you more yourself? Are you joyful and more alive? Or are you becoming anxious, careful, and muted, feeling confused and drained? Are you becoming a version of yourself that exists mainly to keep them comfortable? Because that's not love. It's captivity. And yes, that absolutely affects your vibration. When you live in contradiction, your energy gets muddy. When you keep overriding your own truth, your energy gets heavy. And when you keep pretending that something doesn't hurt, your energy starts to split because one part of you knows the truth, but another part of you keeps explaining it away. And that split is exhausting. It's costing you your precious life force. It clouds your clarity and it lowers your ability to hear your own intuition. Your intuition speaks the truth. Like I said before, the body is not going to lie to you. And if we keep bargaining with the truth, knowing what we know deep down inside, eventually we start to lose the signal. We'll say, I don't know what to do. But no, we do know. We just don't like what the knowing would require. It would require putting distance between you. It would require putting a boundary. It would require putting up a boundary. And we know we need to stop rescuing. We know we need to stop rescuing. And most of all, we know that we need to stop giving access to someone who keeps misusing it over and over. We know that. We do. But then the understanding comes in. They're lonely. They're damaged. Well, they don't have anyone else. I know they're trying and I don't want to hurt them. And suddenly our knowing gets buried under explanations. And that's how understanding becomes fog. And that fog isn't a high vibration. The high vibration is clarity. And I want to be very gentle here, because people who become too understanding are usually not foolish people. They're usually deeply sensitive people. They've been through a lot themselves. And they know what pain feels like. They know what abandonment feels like. They know what it feels like to be misunderstood. And they don't want to do that to anyone else. And that's so sweet. It's beautiful. It really is. But sometimes our greatest gifts need boundaries around them, like our compassion, our empathy, generosity, patience, and yes, even forgiveness. They all need boundaries. And your forgiveness especially needs a boundary. Because without boundaries, the very things that make you wonderful are the things that can be used against you. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. A person without boundaries can mistake being drained for being loved. And that's a painful way to live. We can talk ourselves into thinking that it's an expression of higher love, but I'm here to tell you it's not. But I'm here to tell you it's not. So what is the higher love? The higher vibration. The higher vibration is not I understand everything, so I allow everything. No, I don't believe there's any real spiritual value to being a martyr. The higher vibration is not less companion. The higher vibration is not less compassion. It is better discernment. It is the ability to say, yes, I understand why you are the way you are. I understand that you have pain and that something happened to you. I know that you might not have been loved well or taught well or protected when you should have been protected. But I also have to understand myself. And I have to understand and really have to understand what all this is doing to me. I have to understand what happens inside my own body when I keep making excuses for behavior that hurts me. And I have to understand that my well-being should be my biggest. And I have to understand that my well-being should be my biggest priority. That's spiritual maturity. Because real spirituality is not just open-heartedness. It is also wisdom. And wisdom knows when love needs a door, when compassion needs distance, and that forgiveness does not mean reunion. That's another piece people get confused about. Forgiveness does not mean access. You can forgive someone and still not allow them back in your life. You can have compassion for someone and still block that phone number. You can really wish someone healing and still never sit across from them again. You can release bitterness without reopening the door. And there is nothing low vibrational about protecting your peace. In fact, sometimes that's the healthiest thing that you can do. It is the moment when you finally stop arguing with what your body and spirit have been trying to tell you and allow the truth to be known, not only in your body and your spirit, but in your mind and your heart as well. And for some people, that really is the lesson. It's not that they need to become less loving or less compassionate or less willing to understand another human being. The lesson is that their love has to include themselves. And let me repeat that in a way that is more personal. The lesson is that your love has to include yourself. Some people learned very early that love meant keeping everyone else comfortable. They learned how to read the room. They learned how to sense when someone was angry or disappointed or shut down or about to explode. They learned how to adjust themselves so things would not get worse. And over time, that started to feel like love because they needed it to feel like love. But it isn't love. It's the emotional labor of survival. It's the habit of making yourself smaller so that someone else does not have to face themselves. Because for some people, when they do have to face themselves, become very dangerous to the person who woke them up, who dared say anything or pointed anything out. And that's when the pattern that follows you, and when that pattern follows you into adult relationships, it can look very noble from the outside. You are patient, you're forgiving, you are deeply understanding. But inside, well, you are exhausted. When survival dresses up as spirituality, it can be very hard to recognize. It can look very noble from the outside. And when that pattern follows you into adult relationships, it can look very noble from the outside. You are patient. You are forgiving. You are understanding. But inside, well, you're exhausted. Other people may admire you for how much you tolerate because you are the bigger person. But isn't that a trap? Because all the same, your body knows the truth. Your body knows when compassion feels clean and when compassion feels clean and when it feels heavy. Real compassion usually has some space in it. You can care about someone and still feel like yourself. You can see their pain without getting swallowed by it. And there is warmth there, but there is also steadiness. But when compassion has turned into an obligation, it feels very different. It starts to feel tight and heavy and guilty because you're not choosing it freely anymore. You are doing it because you feel responsible for how someone else will feel if you stop. You're not giving grace. You are avoiding a potentially painful situation. And this is where you have to pay attention. After you give someone your understanding, do you feel more peaceful? Or do you feel drained? Do you feel clearer? Do you feel clearer? Do you feel clearer? Or more confused? Do you feel loving? Or do you feel trapped? Do you feel connected to yourself? Or do you feel like you just talked yourself into accepting something that hurt you? That's usually how you can tell the difference. Real compassion does not require you to disappear. Real compassion does not require you to swallow your own pain. Because high vibration is not measured by how much you tolerate. It is measured by how aligned you are with your truth. Is measured by how aligned you are with truth. And yes, truth can be uncomfortable. It can disappoint people. Truth changes relationships, and sometimes truth ends relationships. Telling the truth, sometimes telling the truth will make you look less nice, but it brings your energy back. It puts your spirit back into your body. It recenters your core. And from that place, you can have real compassion. And that's what we're talking about here, real compassion. The kind of compassion that still leaves you whole. Not the kind when you keep giving and giving until there's nothing left of you, or the kind where you keep explaining away behavior that you know is hurting you. And definitely not the kind where you are so focused on someone else's pain that you stop noticing what it is doing to your own spirit. Real compassion does not ask you to become smaller. It doesn't ask you to dim yourself so that someone else doesn't have to face their own darkness. It doesn't ask you to dim yourself so that someone else doesn't have to face their own darkness. It lets you understand and care, yes, but it also lets you stay intact. Real compassion is what says, I see you, I understand you, and still, I will not betray myself. That's a very different energy. That's compassion with a spine. And I think that that's what many people are being called into now. Not less love, but wiser love. Not less compassion, but cleaner compassion. Clearer compassion. Not less understanding, but the understanding that includes yourself. Because you matter too. And so does your story and your pain and your soul. All of that matters. You matter. And I know for some people listening, that might be the hardest part to accept. You can understand why someone hurt you. You can understand where it came from. The childhood, the wound, the fear, the trauma, the pattern, and you can still say, this cannot continue. And that may be the most high vibrational thing you will ever do. Not because it's dramatic or righteous, but because it is true. And that truth clears your field. Your truth raises the vibration and brings your soul back into alignment. So maybe the question isn't, am I being understanding enough? Maybe the question is my understanding costing me my peace? Is it connected to truth? Am I loving from my center, or am I loving from my own wound? Am I seeing their soul while abandoning my own? Those are the questions. And if the answer is yes, if you realize you have been too understanding, don't feel bad. Because this is usually coming from a beautiful, loving part of you. This is the part of you that is hopeful and believes that people can change. That part of you doesn't need to be destroyed, but it does need to be protected with your wisdom and with your boundaries. Most of all, it needs to learn that love does not Most of all, it needs to learn that love does not require the absence of self. So maybe there's a new prayer, and it's very simple. Let me see clearly. Not so that I can be better or cruel, only that I can see clearly, whatever that means to me. Because that's the balance. That is the higher dimension. Not floating above pain or pretending it doesn't matter. Not saying it's love when it's really fear. Just seeing clearly, loving wisely, and standing firmly. And remembering that your soul did not come here to be consumed by someone else's wound. Your soul came here to live and learn and love, and it came here to awaken those qualities to the highest form they can take in this lifetime. Sometimes that awakening can be very gentle. And sometimes that awakening sounds like saying without anger, there will be no more of this. So today, maybe you can think about that in the context of the life that you're living right now. Where have you been too understanding? How have you explained away the pain? When did you call something compassion when it was really self-abandonment? And why have you been trying to keep someone else warm by setting yourself on fire? And think about this. What would change if you stopped? What if your heart became a heart that finally included you? Because we are taught that understanding is beautiful, but we are not taught that understanding without self-respect is depletion. But we are not taught that's but we are not taught that understanding without self-respect is depletion. It is not enlightenment. So I'm teaching you now. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to choose yourself. You can understand them and bless them and wish them healing, and you can still walk away. That's not a low vibration. That may be the moment that your vibration finally rises back to That may be the moment your vibration finally rises back to where it belongs. So thank you for joining me today on A Higher Dimension. If what I've been talking about resonates with you, please pass it on to someone else that you could use. Please pass it on to someone that you think could use the message. And if you'd like to find out more about working with me, Go to gloriadanvershypnosis.com and book a free consultation. Let's find out how we can help you regain your balance in this life that you're living. And until next time, be kind to your heart and don't abandon it. Bye.